song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my only shrine. What other in other lands I redeem, with hopes and dreams, true and high as my countryside, the oceans and sunlight beams, and waters deep and wide. But other lands I've sung and over skies everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, the nations. A song of peace for the land, for us. Song of peace,
Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church, Sunday, October 4th. We're a welcoming congregation, although not quite as welcoming because we're only allowed 10 people inside, but in spirit, we're a welcoming congregation to all those from all races, creeds, gender identities, sexual orientations. We're a place where people feel at home in many places where they don't feel at home at church. We got a number of things going on every week. Of course, we've got kids out in the parking lot today playing socially distanced on bikes and bubbles, which we've been doing about every other week. This coming week, we have the Senior Covenant group joining us on the patio, safe. We're using microphones that are sanitized. We're gathering people back outside in groups that are smaller than 10. Seekers is on Wednesday. My Zoom call, people can jump in on it, is at 11 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. This coming weekend's busy. We go back to Laundry Love at noon. We're down at Levy's Laundry. We're bringing a small crew. We're not asking for volunteers right now, but we are beginning to serve the population that struggles economically and helping them wash their clothes. At 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, for the next 6 weeks, we're going to have a race-based conversation on, it's been on YouTube and Facebook, and we also invite people to come and sit out on our patio live. So we have a speaker. It's Zach Ritter. He has a Jewish heritage. He's an academic. He's going to talk about reparations and undermining the status quo and making institutions more equal in terms of race. So we've got that. That afternoon at 4 o'clock on Saturday, we have one of our favorite people who were in our world religion study, Amanda Zuner, coming back, and she's going to facilitate a conversation about the upcoming election. That's from 4 to 6. So you have two options to come to church events on Saturday, one at 10 to 11, and then one from 4 to 6. We're going to have a little bit of a party. Severin's going to play. There's going to be a little bit of music, and we're going to have a speaker. And we're trying to sort of, that's not going to be online at all, so that's going to be just an in-person event. And we're just trying to gather back and practice, safe distancing and make sure that everybody's safe, but try to get people up on campus again in safe ways. Okay. Today is a sermon that our own Dan Dempster prompted me. He went out and bought about a handful of these books because he fell in love with this book, and I understand why. It's called The Secrets of Happy Families. We don't really talk too much about families, at least I historically have not. I'm a bachelor, I guess, but in mega churches and in evangelical churches, they talk a lot about families, and to their credit. And a lot of blended families now, a lot of changing rules with screen time, and now with Zoom. This book doesn't address that, but there's 1,000 different people from ethnic backgrounds merging into families. The family has been under transformation for at least the last 50 years. So this book is really about that. Bruce Feiler, who's a great author of the Near East and has written lots of books around biblical times in interesting, fascinating ways, he found this. He found that the rules don't any longer apply. The advice from our parents feels antiquated. Our friends on Facebook don't know much better how to raise their kids, and all the manuals and self-help books at the library or at the bookstore are all sort of quippy banalities. So we're here to talk about families today, and we're going to get to that. But I want to invite up our own just recently past president and Mr. Everything, Gary Hart, who's going to read our chalice words, and I will light our chalice.
Yes, Mr. Everything. I'm not sure. It's probably good. Today's chalice words are from Elizabeth Harding, entitled A Symbol of Learning and Love. We Unitarian Universalists don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice helps keep the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us. It doesn't burn us. It gives us light so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The flaming chalice is a symbol of learning and of love. It's our symbol, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
And now with Severin and Abraham and a hymn.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Dempster. I'm a Buddhist teacher here at PUC, and I lead a Tuesday evening meditation group, 7:30 to 9. And we meet outside on the patio, beautiful evening, and I want to share something that goes together with what we've learned from this book, The Secrets of Happy Families, for children. And an awful lot of this with good Dharma teaching. And I want to read you a brief anecdote about negotiations, which the children will enjoy, I think find amusing, and so will their parents. The case of the fuzzy socks. 2 hours west of Cambridge is the small town of East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. This quaint village says it's the home of a section where 7 streets intersect without a traffic light. It's also the home of Josh Weiss, Adina Elfant, and their 3 daughters, Kayla, 11, Ailey, 9, and Taylor, 5. Josh is the co-founder of Harvard's Global Negotiation Initiative and works closely with Bill Urey in the Middle East. Adina directs community learning at a nearby college. On the Saturday I arrived, they were confronting a negotiation crisis of their own. The source was not warheads, warlords, or warmongering. It was much more delicate. Fuzzy socks. Ailey's fuzzy socks had holes in them, so she asked Kayla if she could borrow hers for a week until she got new ones. Kayla said yes. Of course, at the end of the week, Ailey still didn't have new socks, so she asked for another night. Kayla agreed, but 5 minutes later changed her mind. A fight erupted. Luckily, a peace negotiator was nearby. Taylor, the 5-year-old, stepped between her 2 older sisters. "Hold it," she said. "Ailey, you go ahead and say your stuff. Then Kayla, you say yours afterwards. And don't interrupt." "Why did she do that?" "I don't know," she said. "My dad does it a lot when we get into fights, so I kind of picked it up from him." On their first date years ago, Josh asked Adina how she dealt with conflict. "I never thought about it. I suppose I let things roll off my back," she said. "In my experience, things don't roll," he said. "They just sit there building up until they become a crushing weight." Josh said he preferred to deal with conflict head on by talking things through and to keep on talking until everyone was happy with the solution. Eventually, when they started dating, the 2 of them had to reach a compromise. When issue arises, Adina gets to retreat and process her thoughts, and she returns when she's ready to talk. Josh and Adina tried to let their daughters figure out on their own way of doing this. Each of the girls had a slightly different way of responding to conflict, and this is where things get interesting. Their techniques all reflected what their parents had taught them from the world of negotiation studies. Taylor, the 1st grader, was the most straightforward. Beyond separating combatants, she was fond of rock, paper, scissors. "It's a start," Josh said. Ailey, in the 4th grade, had more tricks. She used a technique called stop, think, control, a child's equivalent of going to the balcony in which you get control of your feelings first, and then return to the stage. She was also old enough to begin considering the other person's feelings. "There was this new girl last year who was being mean to me," she said. "I asked my mom and dad what to do, and they said, think about it from her point of view. Maybe she doesn't have a lot of friends. Why not be nice to her? I tried that one day, and it worked." Kayla, in 6th grade, had already mastered some sophisticated adult problem-solving tricks. For starters, she loved going to the balcony. "When I fight with my sisters," she explained, "I say, look, I don't want to talk to you right now because I'm mad. Maybe we can talk later." And I'll push away from the table and go back to my room. So, all of the RE families that were with us have a copy of this book, and I encourage you to pick it up and read. If not, we do have the audiobook and a copy of this book available in the library if you would like to take it home and go through it with your family. The most important thing, I think, to take away from this is that you are not your emotions. You feel emotions. And particularly as little kids, we think that when we get angry, when we get sad, when we feel things strongly, we feel that we're this ball of emotion and that's our identity. So the second thing is, once we realize that, can we take a step back? Can we take a step back from that? If we can do that, that's called going to the balcony. And it's like being a witness to your own life. Can you step away from your emotions and the conflict? And the third is coming to a resolution. And so we've talked very briefly about 3 different ways of approaching that. I encourage you to discuss it with your mom and dad at home and think about ways that you can be a little happier about working through things that bother you, particularly since we're stuck at home all the time with each other. We love each other very much, but it's frankly very difficult when we're on top of each other all the time. So we learn how to negotiate. And in this book and in the three things that I talked to you about, there are some very good things to consider talking over with your siblings and with your parents. So we wish you a pleasant week, and we will see you again very soon.
It's now time for joys and concerns. I think this is the part of the service where we lose the most not being present, but this is a chance for people to come forward, light a candle. Gary's lighting our candle now, and share what's on our hearts and minds, and kind of collectively offer prayers for one another in that public way. We do have a couple of folks. Got a young person in our church family that's struggling right now, and we've got one of our facilities guys has a mom who's not doing particularly well at home. We've got Penny Trinnell recovering from hip surgery, and Chelsea is recovering from elbow and wrist surgery. So we're thinking of them. We think about the fires that are raging. 4 million acres of forest has gone down. Camp de Benneville is struggling with both the pandemic and now fires are out, but there's a threat of floods.
And protection for our growth. This house shall be a dwelling place for courage, for integrity, for love, engendered, nourished by a family that speaks of we and means all humankind. These walls shall represent the privacy and dignity of individuals, the open doors, a welcome to all people, all ages, and all generations. The windows shall keep light of inquiry illuminating from outside and within. May all the words spoken here be born of love, an energy rekindled in the hearts of those who dreamed this house, who plied the tools and paid the price to actualize the dream. May dreaming never cease for those within who know the world to be a troubled place, but dare to struggle with imperfectness toward that brighter hope, that better day. Let memories add warmth, a heritage, a quilted patchwork stitched with history of kindliness, of daring for the good, of funny moments, jokes, and smiles and tears. This is a precious place, as every home that shelters those who love and strive and share. Its blessing is in lives that meet within, in living, learning, caring, sheltered here.
Today, in the sermon theme, is about how to best or better do family. This book, the one that Dan children's mowing from, Secrets to Happy Families, comes right out of the gate with this very true assertion about the depth of importance the family has. We in the liberal religious tradition often feel like we're adapting to the changing nature of family. I think sometimes we forget how important it fundamentally is. The book asserts that everybody wants to be happy, which I think we can generally all agree, and that most of us are built, there's a few, crazy hermits out there, but most of us are built to live in community and in particular in families. So this book asserts that our collective desire to be in families is sort of all around us, healthy ones, right? That's the reason why at the top of the TV charts, the ratings in every generation, there's always a happy family. There's the Cosby Show, or there's the struggles from All in the Family. Before that, Leave It to Beaver, the Brady Bunch, right? There's never been a stretch of time where there hasn't been a healthy family, except when Seinfeld was at the top of the ratings. Most of the time, we now have Modern Family, which is essentially right there. People in families manage stress better. They tend to endure hardships better because they feel a part of something larger than themselves. And I love the fact that Dan chose this and sort of pushed it upon me. He was right to pick this book. It's a worthy topic because, first and foremost, it's not so much about how smart you are in life that makes you successful. It's really the manner in which you can relate to others, and families are the crucible in which that takes place. You'd almost begin to think in reading the book that it was written by some modern pastor in a white, wealthy evangelical church, but it was not. It was written by what I think of as a fairly geeky New York Times bestseller, Bruce Feiler, who, despite having written a bunch of fresh books about the Near East and stars like Abraham and Moses, really never talks about God. Talks about faith in a distant way, and how it's important for some families. Talks about how married couples should flirt in front of their kids, and the sex talk should be a real conversation that begins really early in life. It's a very secular book with some pretty smart ideas that come from the world of technology and the army and all these sort of different group dynamics. Bruce is a father, and he's also a husband and 2 girls, and he's unapologetic about how much of a cornerstone families are to society. Kind of all know this, don't we? Also, again, how much there's been changes. From women in the workplace working to the higher level of divorce rates, lots of things have come in to change families without us being able to adapt and have that many tools. He likes to think of this book as a manifesto in managing those changes. But I love the fact that he doesn't want to stick his finger in the dike at these changes. He wants to ride them. He wants to take the agility and the adaptability that's been in the sort of vernacular and in the spirit of corporate workplace change and bring it to the family. The nice thing is that it doesn't feel really like there's a lot of shoulds in there or scolding. It just feels like opportunities. So we all, as he says, admire for this, and his phrase is sunny, smooth running household that we all aspire to, rather than have the exhausting, ear-splitting ones we actually live in. So that's the goal. And this was basically, book was derived from a lot of sources. Like I said, it's experts. It's people who were experts in certain fields that applied these techniques in their own homes. And he himself, Feiler himself, uses his own family as a guinea pig. So it was printed in 2013. I don't want to spend too much time on a book review on it, but what's really contained in here are lists and very practical advice on about a dozen areas of family life. And I like the image that I had where these little kernels of truth are set within narratives and little interesting stories about families, almost in the way that little fruit pieces are contained within a Jell-O mold. So most of the book is divided into chapters that do about a dozen things that all families do. They fight, they play, they deal with money, they eat together, they manage and curtail and correct one another's behaviors, they coordinate schedules, and those things are at the heart of what he suggests. So here we go. In rough order of advice as to how this book runs, it talks about how and when to manage the classic family dinner, how to get your family out in the morning without like a ton of tears, how to brand and set for your family a sense of a narrative in the past of who you as a people have been, and to set a mission for who it is that you want to be, right? That's a beautiful kind of balance. And he suggests that that broad context really supports people. And it allows people, to, kids who have disabilities and are challenged are generally much more successful based on how broad their family outreach is. It was a little painful for me to read through this. I'm a single person. I'm 53. I came from a pretty broad family, but we haven't had a lot of additional kids. So this notion of family that I grew up with, which was pretty good, has kind of diminished. And it was a little bit tender to read through this, I have to say. So let's talk a little bit about the basics here. So I'm going to summarize the quick advice in a couple of different ways. Here we go. Be agile, adapt, figure out what works. Think of everything as being written by chalk or on a whiteboard that gets erased. Be communicative with your people. Talk about things. Talk about deep things, shallow things. Talk about details. Have fun. He says that there's always going to be fighting, so you have to balance out the fighting with the good stuff. He suggests, as Dan was suggesting with the fuzzy sock story, that you should fight empathetically and think about negotiation. Fight quickly as well. One of the more interesting pieces that came out of it was the wisdom that almost nothing of relevance to the immediate situation comes out after any length of time in any kind of conflict. I thought that was great. It all just rehashes old things. I thought that was smart. He says, so expect that. Work to create ritual in your lives, even funny, silly rituals. He tells this great story about this Jewish family, and the kid's favorite ritual is that the father of the family at these Sabbath dinners throws beanies and the kids try to catch them on their head, which might seem sacrilegious to many, but it really drew the kids into their heritage in an interesting way. So expect conflict, talk about your families, and uphold and lift up the individuality of each person. That's the quick takeaway. I'm going to try that one more time in a slightly different way. Here's another sort of summary blast of the sermon and the content. Communication. Communicate. Take time to do so at family meetings, in 1,000 other ways. Encourage individuals, as I just said. Develop a commitment to the family with those that are within its bounds. Cultivate a sense of sacredness, that the family is itself a living entity that has its own life and needs to be nourished. Adaptability comes up all the time. The word agile in his book is suggested completely. Clear roles. When it comes to family vacations and morning breakfast routines, there should be very clear, definitive roles that keep the conflict at bay. Time together. Throughout this book, Tolstoy's famous line, all happy families are the same, and all unhappy families, phrased better, I have it written somewhere, are different in some way, is sort of resonant through the book, both critiqued and accepted. So at family meetings, it's designed that they be roughly, this is the rough advice, but adapted to your needs. 20 minutes. Don't expect deep conversation at all of it, either at dinners or at these meetings, and simply ask a few series of questions. What did we and I do well this week? What did we not do so well as a family this week? What do we commit to doing better in the next week? Keeping it simple and allowing these structured meetings allows things not to build up and need to be vented. He talks a lot about also this sense of mission statement, which are mixed in here. So family meetings and schedules mix in with this idea of creating a branding for your family, this idea of who we are. And there's a few exercises that are in the book that are encouraged us to think about who our family's been, right? My family is particularly unpretentious, frugal, and sort of pragmatic and loyal. Like those would be the things that I think would mix into my family's dynamics. He says families that have a clear identity and mission can go off base, which he says families do it about 90% of their time. But when they have a mission, they have a direction to come back together. That was sort of surprisingly wise. Steve Covey, a famous author who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, said that creating a mission statement for his family was one of the most successful, transformative moments in their life. So high praise from Stephen Covey. So families are designed to encourage the positive things that they are, of course, rather than the negative ones. Serving worthy purposes in societies. It helps bring up the family as something that's worth supporting. And the idea of traditions and vacations and stuff are designed to be encouraged. One family branded their mission with the simple word adventure and closed their statement with the word love. Our family begins with adventure and the last word is love. So family dinners are great and suggested, but it says, in the modern world, that's not necessarily easy to create. So maybe family desserts 3 times a week or one family meal a week and fun games around the table. Maybe Monday is autobiography day where you sort of introduce a family member from the past and talk about your great grandparents. So you're trying to build this sense of a collective support system around, particularly for the kids. And this is a book written with, a lot of advice for lots of us in there, but I think it's particularly helpful for families with younger kids because there's a lot of the stuff that really makes it fun for kids. When they talk about allowances, there's the thought that there probably generally should be allowances, but then any kind of retraction to the allowance is something that the kids have to pay back, if they don't eat their vegetables or whatever the choices they are. And rather than, because people have a much more of a resistance to give up what they have than to get something new. So that's an interesting way to phrase that. Expectations always must be versatile, Feiler says. These ideas are always, again, malleable. Agile is the word. The idea of reversing the waterfall of power comes up a lot. So giving kids as much balance and control as possible. At one of the family meetings, they suggested that for someone to receive kind of punishments for being out of line at the family meeting, which could, run from sit-ups to, fun kind of things like that. 2 kids could vote in that was an acceptable punishment or 1 adult. So there was like a back and forth, and kids were encouraged to bring up critiques of their families. One of the strengths of the story in there was this refrain that it is stress that's a killer. So when they asked kids what they wanted, parents always thought that kids would want more of their time. What kids wanted was their parents to be less stressful. And I thought that was an interesting piece. And that has a lot to do with conflict. So great sort of simple skills of negotiation, as Dan mentioned, getting people out of their emotionally loaded state before they deal with things, reference being going to the balcony, and to move the spotlight, for each person to be asked to move the spotlight off the way they feel to how the other person feels, and to then begin to come up with solutions. Always through the book, solutions exist. Solutions exist. You just need to care for them. We think about the content at the end, the simplest way to phrase it that's hard was the word try, right? Behind this all is the idea that nothing really comes easy. These are my words. And anything we do, from Severin's playing to Abraham to, whatever skill any of us might have, it really does require trying. And I think that we all fall into the pattern that within our own families, it should just sort of naturally work, right? And we play around the edges either to make things special, but we don't do so systematically in the same way that we teach our kids how to play soccer, right? Or to move in particular ways. And he's suggesting families, because of their importance, require that level of attention. Think about what makes people successful. Largely, it's healthy families that do that. So Solutions exist. Here's a few other random things that came up. The hour before you wake, the hour after you rise, just before you're about to leave, and the hour before you're about to go to bed are the hot spots for families. And those time frames need to be negotiated the most. There's nothing smart said that much longer into a fight. So get over fights quick. Make sure that the fighting is balanced by as much joy. Plan your family vacations, create checklists and points that can eliminate that tension in those very complex, tense moments. I was reading the book that, like I said, every effort to do anything requires a certain amount of attention and love and try. What more, ask yourself, is there than to try at the people that are closest to you in your life? When people look at what's important in their lives, the most important thing is spending quality time with the people they truly love. That is the highest correlated fact around happiness. Take that in as you think about where you spend your time. Think about things flexibly, but think about things diligently. These ideas are tools not written on a stone tablet chiseled by some Woodsburg, and they're not a commandment. The book is filled with ideas that can be implemented and written as if they were on a whiteboard. So engage your kids more than you control them. Let them work out their own schedules, work out their own punishments to the degree that you're comfortable. Engage the whole family a lot. Keep talking. Create a family mission statement or narrative that can guide it and hold its past. Happiness is found in the doing of things. Another great piece of wisdom. We're most happy, and you can reflect on this in your own life, by doing things. We generally like painting artistic things almost more than we like looking at paintings. Families are all going to have troubles, so create magical moments as much as one can. Things take work. The most valuable things should take the most work. Determine for you how much of that is worth it. Amen. I'd like to now invite Gary up, who's going to share the offertory humor with me, and I'm going to step aside over here. This is a little piece called "The Game of Questions" that was played on a plane. There's a woman and a man, they're seated next to each other on a flight. They just sat down from LA to New York. And the man, slightly irritatingly, asks if the woman would like to play a fun game.
The woman was tired and just wanting to take a nap. Politely declined, no thanks.
However, the man persisted and explained that the game is easy. Here's the game. I'll ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you pay me $5 and vice versa.
Again, the woman declined, still trying to get some rest. No thanks.
She turned away, but the guy was bored and a little bit agitated. He was looking for some company. He said, okay, I'll make you a deal. If you don't know the answer, you pay me $5 for any question. But if I don't know the answer, I will pay you $100. How's that sound?
Now this catches the woman's attention, and she figured there would be no end to this torment unless she played along and agrees to try.
The man starts with the first question. What's the distance between the earth and the moon?
The woman doesn't say a word and quickly reaches into her purse, pulls out a $5 bill, and hands it to the guy.
Okay, says the man, your turn.
The woman asked, what goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4 legs, and turned back toward the window.
The man was puzzled, thought about it, didn't know, took out his laptop, searched through his phone because they were still on the tarmac, no answer. He called his friend, no answer. After half an hour, he taps over, the plane was in the air, he taps the woman and reluctantly hands her $100 in cash.
The woman says thank you and turns back to get some more sleep.
The man, who is little more than a myth now, taps the woman on the shoulder, waking her again, and says, "So, what's the answer?"
Without a word, the woman reaches into her wallet, hands the man $5, and says, "I have no idea," and goes back to sleep.
Give as generously as the man on the plane did.
And now for our closing words. Please join us at home where you're hopefully safe and warm. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it, as we say, Amen, Shalom, Salam, Namaste, and blessed be. We say that to represent all those religious truths, and we also say, and now our service truly begins. Stay tuned for our postlude.
Weise fliehen meine Liebe durch die Nacht zu in den stillen Hain hernieder, Liebchen, komm zu Lichtens lange Wipfel rauschen in des Mondes Licht, in des Mondes Licht. Des Verliebtes freundlich lauschen, Fichte halte nicht, Fichte halte nicht. Löst die Nacht die Gallen schlagen, ach, sie fliehen dir. Mit der Töne süßen Klagen fliehen sie für mich. Sie verstehen des bösen Segen, kennen Liebesschmerz, kennen Liebesschmerz. Rühren mit den Silbertönen jedes weiche Herz, jedes weiche Herz. Lass auch dir die Brust bewegen, Liebchen, höre mich, bebend fahr ich dir entgegen. Komm, beglücke mich, komm, beglücke mich,
I always joke with Abraham when we were in the collective, like, don't give up. You're almost there. Yeah. I want to add that I put a little, Gabby put a little cheat for the book on the website called The Secret to Happy Families. It's readily accessible there. So if you want a little, just a little advice without having to read the book about tips you can use in your family, it's available. Please tune in to our race conversations at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And if you want to, come to the campus at 4 o'clock next Saturday for our live discussion. Thanks for coming. Amen.